Hoşgeldiniz hanımlar ve hanımlar. A very warm welcome to you all, to our hosts, speakers, and our distinguished guests. My name is Sophie Ibbotson, and I will be your moderator for today's event, a celebration of the life and work of Alisher Navoi, the father of Uzbek literature and the national poet of Uzbekistan. It is my aim for you to hear from me as little as possible so that we can maximize our time for talks, poetry, and music. But I will be introducing each speaker and section of the event in turn. Before we begin, please turn off your microphone if you're not presenting or playing in order to reduce the background noise. Please join me in welcoming our first three speakers. Sherzod Asadov, Deputy Foreign Minister of Uzbekistan, Dinenage MP, UK Minister of State for Digital and Culture, and Kamola Akilova, Deputy Minister of Culture of Uzbekistan, who will each share with us their opening remarks. Sherzod, please.
Thank you, Sophie. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Very good. Distinguished participants, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this forum dedicated to the 580th anniversary of the great poet and statesman whom we know as the founder of Uzbek language and classic literature, Alisher Navoi. We are pleased to see today the parliament representatives from Great Britain and Uzbekistan, deputy ministers of culture, Navoi scientists, linguists and media representatives, as well as, of course, our embassy staff in the Great Britain. I extend my gratitude to our British friends for their special interest to the great Uzbek poet and philosopher Alisher Navoi. As a clear proof of my words, we can see the scientific research carried out on the works of Alisher Navoi stored in the British Library, as well as the publications of the collection of the poem New Divan Hazrat Alisher Navoi, belonging to the British poet Andrew Staniland. And of course, it is worth noting that in recent years, bilateral relations between Uzbekistan and United Kingdom, including our cooperation in the field of culture, arts and education, have been further strengthened. We highly appreciate our cooperation, the level of our cooperation with the British Council, which has become, I may say, one of our important partners in the domain of education and science since the first years of independence of the Republic of Uzbekistan. And the International University of Westminster, which has been established here in 2002, has been training the necessary staff and personnel for various sectors of Uzbek economy. The agreement which was reached last year between Queen Maria University of London and Tashkent State University of Law on the first joint diploma program in the field of jurisprudence is one of our achievements. And we are pleased that the prestigious universities of Britain, including Glasgow, Dundee, Cardiff, Manchester Metropolitan, Newcastle, Portsmouth, have been cooperating with Uzbekistan and are working on different joint projects in the field of education. Within the past 2 years, the first presidential schools were established and opened their doors for the students here in Uzbekistan. And this was done with the support of the Cambridge Assessment Organization. And in the following years, it is planned to open such presidential and art schools in all Uzbek regions. Dear friends, cultural ties between our two countries are being developed further. This can be seen in the activity of the British-Uzbek Society, which was established in 2002. This organization has been holding many cultural events, mainly aimed at introducing the rich history, culture, arts and millennial traditions of Uzbekistan to our British friends. And in 2020, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the British-Uzbek Friendship Society and Uzbekistan's Committee on Inter-Ethnic Relations with foreign countries. And these two organizations worked very closely in holding today's event, and we thank them for their great work and cooperation. It is known that in the museums, libraries, and collections of United Kingdom, there are many artifacts belonging to the great thinkers of Uzbekistan, as well as artifacts related to the history of Central Asia. And at present, close cooperation with the British Museum, the Museum of Albert and Victoria, British Library, the Bodleian Library, and other museums and societies is being carried out to make joint research of these rare artifacts and museum exhibits, and we've been working to obtain digital copies of these artifacts and create catalogs, and we will be looking forward to further developing this cooperation. Dear friends, in closing, using this good opportunity, I wish this event to be very successful, and I'm sure that it will give us a good opportunity in furthering our fruitful cooperation in the future. Thank you very much, Sophie.
Thank you very much. Caroline, if you would now please take the microphone.
Thank you, Sophie, and good morning, everyone here in the UK, and good evening to those joining on Tashkent time. My name is Caroline Dinenage. I'm the Minister of State for Digital and Culture at the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport here in the UK government. I'm really grateful for this invitation to say a few words at what I'm sure will be a really fitting and exceptional celebration of Alisher Navoi. Dating back to the 15th century, our two states have long and really deep-rooted historical ties. British merchants, travellers and adventurers visited what's now the territory of Uzbekistan from the 16th century onwards and travelled through the extraordinary Great Silk Roads, through the legendary cities of Uzbekistan, of Samarkand, of Bukhara, of Khiva. They not only allowed merchants to exchange goods, but they also helped to exchange ideas and knowledge and culture and friendship between the nations. And these ties can still be felt really strongly today. As you've already heard, British libraries and museums house collections of manuscripts and artifacts relating to the past contacts between Britain and Uzbekistan, including the British Museum and the British Library. Scholars from both the UK and Uzbekistan are working closely to explore this heritage. I'm delighted to hear that Portsmouth University is part of this. It's my hometown, and literally just at the end of my road over there is Portsmouth Harbour. It's so lovely to hear that those links are right here on my own doorstep. Here in Britain, our culture and education sectors are so hugely important, both economically and intellectually, but also to our hearts, to our well-being. They play such a major part in our vision for global Britain, strengthening our links right across the globe. And Uzbekistan is now set on its own path of reform, and it's a particularly propitious time to strengthen those cultural and those educational ties, to continue those great friendships, as well as our economic links. And I think the British Council plays a key role in supporting the development of the cultural and creative industries. There are several programs focused on arts, on education, on society, and on the English language. And since launching their arts program in 2015, the British Council has engaged with 3,000 decision makers, art professionals, art teachers, and students face to face, and 11 million people through exhibitions, through publications, and through broadcasts. So thank you once again for inviting me to take part in today's event. I'm truly humbled to be here, and looking ahead, you have some wonderful guests, you have some great speakers on your itinerary. So I hope you all really enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Kamola, if you would now share with us your opening remarks.
Assalamu alaikum, aziz dostlar, hamkasblar.
Good afternoon, dear participants and friends. Today, our event, I'm glad specifically to see you at this conference dedicated to the 580th anniversary of the great poet and statesman Alisher Navoi. It is well known that the most talented people, no matter what field of science, enlightenment, and culture they are involved in, they remain the pride of the people and the nation in which they live. Many artists such as Shakespeare, Goethe, Honoré de Balzac, Lev Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, who enrich the treasury of world literature with their immortal works, are highly valued and respected not only by the nations to which they belong, but also by enlighteners all over the world. Alisher Navoi is also a source of pride for the Turkic peoples and one of the unique poets of world literature. Hazrat Alisher Navoi, like other great figures of the medieval Renaissance, is one of the exceptional personalities who throughout his life made invaluable contribution to the development of human thought with his humanistic ideas, artistic and ethic views, unique poetic works. Navoi not only marked the development of Uzbek literature with his work, but also had a great influence on the development of the whole spiritual culture of Movaranahar in Khorasan. His works, his poetry have been copied over and over again, spread among the people, and serve as a school for poets. The role of Hazain or Maoni Divan in Nawai's lyrical heritage is unique. It has more than 2,500 ghazals. Not poet in Eastern literature has ever written so many ghazals. His poetry protects man from aimlessness and meaninglessness. His works, first of all, teach people to think and imagine world. Indeed, the same meaning is hidden in the foundations of religions and mythological teachings. That is to deliver the rebellious soul from the mire of nothingness and to bring it to the rank of holiness. This fact is the basis of Alisher Navoi's poetry. Probably for this reason, the spirit of Navoi's Ghazal is a beautiful poem, embellished with a world-class and humane mood. Besides being a poet, Alisher Navoi was also a great scientist, a thinker of his time. His memoir, Majalis un Nafais, contains unique information about the life and works of 359 poets who wrote in Uzbek and Persian. So dear friends, today's forum is extremely important as it is aimed at glorifying universal values put forward by our great thinker and seeking ways to implement them in today's culture, strengthening the centuries-old friendly relations between our peoples. It should be noted that our cultural ties with the UK have a deep and rich history. There is no one in Uzbekistan who has not read the great English poet and playwright Shakespeare. Poems and ballads based on his works Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, and kinglier continue to appear on our theatrical stages. The image of Othello, created by the famous Uzbek actor Abror Hidayatov, is one of the peaks of Uzbek theatrical art. At the International Folk Dance Festival in London in 1935, the famous Uzbek dancer Tamara Khanum, her teacher Usta Olim Kamilov, musicians Tohtasin Jalilov and Abdukadir Ismailov amazed the audience with their skills at the Royal Albert Hall Concert Hall. At the ceremony, hosted by King George V and Queen Mary, the Uzbek group was specially invited, and Usta Olim Kamilov was personally awarded a medal on behalf of the Queen. Even today, the young and talented Uzbek pianist Behzod Abdurrahimov and composer Aziza Sadikova are successfully participating in the BBC promenade at the Royal Albert Hall. Young pianist Behzod Abdurrahimov won 2009 London International Piano Competition. We work closely with renowned British museums, galleries, and libraries, including the organization of exhibitions, the joint training of culture and art experts, and conducting of different joint research. In particular, the British Museum and the British Library are our main partners in this regard. At the same time, we want to establish creative cooperation between the professionals of cinema, music, arts, and theater, and organize exhibitions of works of art and national handicrafts and cultural objects. And of course, jointly implement scientific, pedagogical, and other educational programs, as well as translate works of famous writers and poets of both nations. We really do have the great interest in establishing literary cooperation between our countries. We, we have a big plans in this regard. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks to you all. Before we continue, I would like to remind you that we do have simultaneous interpretation for today's talks. So if you the Uzbek talks in English or the English talks in Uzbek, please do click on the translate button at the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred language. We're now going to listen to, or watch in fact, a short film prepared for us by BBC Uzbek, which will introduce you to the life and heritage of Alisher Navoi.
Jandın seni köp severmen, ey umri aziz.
Soldun seni çok severmen, ey umri aziz.
Her neyiniki sevmek ondan artık bolmaz.
Ondan seni köp severmen, ey umri aziz.
Albatta Alisher Navoiyning buyukligi uning istedodida, she'riy dahosida. Bolalikdan uning Mavlona Lutfiy, Sharafiddin Aliyazdi kabi allomalar nazariga tushishi bu iste'dod juda erta ko'rtak berganligidan darak beradi. Ikkinchidan muhit, ya'ni Alisher Navoiy Jomi Husayn Bayqaro zamonida Hirotda shunday bir adabiy, ma'naviy muhit mavjud ediki, Alisher Navoiy ana shu muhitning qoq markazida, eng quyuq joyida dunyoga keldi.
Razin yoqqach ko'zimdan sochilur xallaqsa yosh, bo'ylagim paydo bo'lur yulduz, nihon bulg'och quyosh.
Albatta Navoiy merosining cho'qqisi bu uning Hamsa dastonlari. Hamsa dastonlari nizomiyga xos falsafiylikni, Dehlaviyga xos jushqinlikni, Jomiyga xos donishmandlikni o'zida mujassam eta olgan. Bu asarlarni tasavvufsiz, tasavvuf istilohlari mag'zini chaqmasdan tushunish qiyin. Ammo bu degani bu asarlar faqat tasavvufchilar uchun degani emas. Aytaylik, biz g'arb adabiyoti yoki boshqa e'tiqod asosida yozilgan adabiyotlarni o'qiymiz va undan ma'naviy ozuqa ola olamiz. Shu kabi Navoiy asarlarida ham aslida umuminsoniy qadriyatlar yotadi. Aytaylik, Navoiy asarlarini ham tasavvuf g'oyalariga yo'g'rilgan ma'nolar sinxronlashtirilsa, ularni g'arblikmi sharqlikmi kim bo'lishidan qat'iy nazar o'qiganda ularda o'zligini o'z mohiyatini ko'ra bilishi mumkin.
Alisher Navoi bugungi kunda ham juda qadrli va ibratli. Agar biz Navoiyni o'qisak, o'rgansak, aslo kam bo'lmaymiz. Va men hozir eng go'zal o'zbek tilining Navoiyning g'azalidan baytlar o'qigim keladi. Qo'shiyosinmi deyin, ko'zi qarosinmi deyin, ko'nglima har birining dardu balosinmi deyin, daxranjinmi deyin, hasta shikanjinmi deyin, bu qudrat aro jabru jafosinmi deyin.
I have traveled a lot throughout the world, but when I go to bookstores in foreign countries, I see Jalaluddin Rumi, I see Hafiz, sometimes I see Omar Khayyam, but I have never seen Alisher Navoi in bookstores. Why? Because we don't have translation. Because Alisher Navoi's books have been translated into world languages a few times only, so it is a big problem. For me as an Uzbek poet and translator, I would really like his works are translated into world languages, including English. In one bigger epic poem, Alisher Navoi wrote, Shuhratin olam ichra paydo qil, olam ahlin alarg'a shaydo qil, which means Alisher Navoi himself wanted that his work, his books, are well known and become famous in the world. I translated and published some of the works by Alisher Navoi in English. So when I translate his work, one ghazal or one shorter epic poem, I feel very happy that I'm carrying that very good message of Alisher Navoi.
İsteyenler bizni sahroi baloda istangiz. Vodiy hijron ila dashtu fanoda istangiz.
Vamaqu Farhod Majnundaklar ul vodi aro bo'lsalar paydo meni ham ul aroda istangiz.
Arzu şevqidin Navoi iddiani isteril, ya adam dashtide ya mulki fanoda istangiz.
That was absolutely wonderful. Recitation of Alisher Navoi's poems. You're in for a treat now. We've asked a number of British politicians and friends of Uzbekistan to kindly record their poetry readings for us so that we can enjoy them today. And they will be in the new translations, which you'll hear a little bit more about later.
Men presume heavenly maidens are fascinating, but my own angel is infinitely more captivating. While earthly beauties offer many temptations, many charms, none can spin the glorious imaginings of my love's creating.
Day and night are not as fine as your downy cheek. Others are like basil, when with you in the garden venerating. Is it a wonder? Lovers like me don't die of the beauty's magnificence, while the miracles of your face are so adoringly penetrating.
The more I drink her beauty, the more beautiful she becomes. Only her hiding under Joseph's coat would I find disheartening. Yea, soul, if Layla and Shirin were as fine as our heart's desire, Fahd and Mejnun would like us be in danger of dissipating. If a beloved gives a false word, she would be left unattended. Could a man ignore her heart's desire if, like mine, she's intoxicating? Yea, soul, I heard the description of Peris and Huris oftentimes. None of them, in humanity like a human, is radiating. Yea, Navoi, thorns in her street are like flowers in my eyes, and her place in front of me is like paradise, illuminating.
When the glow of 100 candles reflects off your cheek, the sun would hide itself in shame, embarrassed by being so weak. We stand blessed and joyous while in the wind of your existence, when even the healing breath of Jesus would merely be a gleek. From everlasting to everlasting, you cannot be measured. Like a circle with no beginning and no end, you are oblique. You light the taper, brighten the flower, and the moth is inflamed. Frightened by the unearthly light, the desperate nightingale starts to shriek.
Your enchantment was reflected truly in Shirin and Leela. Farhu died. Mejnun became mournful, pitiable, and meek. Your love and beauty, as you wanted, redemonstrated in your names. From this, the essence becomes feeble, lighting of pain, gloss the peak.
Those who wish to reach you need to get through the step of self, since to gain eternity one ought non-entity to seek. It is not necessary to tell you all my needs and wants, as you are aware always what from people's hearts will leak. Pour the rain of beneficence in the garden of Navoli, for bloom and nightingale, no leaf, no tune, sans your grace unique.
Spring is inescapable hell for me without you. Red bloom is fire, the white has nicey hue. It's no wonder without you, spring is inferno, since paradise will, without his face, turn to Hades too.
As soon as his dreamy fantasies come into my sight, the tears on my face form wrinkles of affliction rue. The sweetest fruits are tasteless to the sick. It's unsurprising if your sweet lip will vile curses eschew. A soul in nothingness longs for heart to hold, because it feels this body for its boorishness, its rue.
Do not say Navoi is unclothed. He wears a robe of non-existence, a misfortune-sown tissue. Having turned a 10-day moon to a smaller arrow, the sky became a herald in front of the king's horse blue.
It is not the wind that smells of musk. It is Leila's unbound hair. Not red tulips on the mount. It is Majnu's blood in display. On one side is me, on the other my beloveds in lilac's mirror. We reflected our visage. It is not at all a rose briar. It is my afflicted soul's bird, not the enchanted nightingale. Who? The flower in the garden? To my sweetheart would compare. Thank you.
The exchange of ideas, information, art, language, and other aspects of culture has the power to foster mutual understanding. Our next speakers will address the topic of cultural diplomacy between the UK and Uzbekistan. And we will hear first from Lord Peter Lilly and President of the Conservative Friends of Eurasia. Peter.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to participate in this celebration of the 580th anniversary of your great national poet. My initial involvement with Uzbekistan was commercial via a British firm investing in your country. Subsequently, I became British co-chair of the Uzbek-British Trade and Industry Council, which just last week held its successful 25th annual meeting. Now, trade and investment are valuable not only in the prosperity they bring to both parties, but because they lead to even more worthwhile benefits. First, they help build friendship between countries, and it's fascinating to discover that even around the time of Alisher Navoi himself, our King Henry wrote to the Emir Tamerlane and to his son, thanking him for protecting Christian merchants in your country. That provides an early illustration of our Victorian philosopher Hazlitt's famous dictum that trade is God's diplomacy, since it promotes cooperation between people of different cultures. Commerce, secondly, leads to personal friendships, and it's a particular pleasure for me that I think I'm going to meet up later on this Zoom call with my friend Senator Safayev. I'm afraid the only aspect of British culture I've shared with him was a visit to Tottenham Football Club. And third, as we celebrate today, it leads to an understanding of each other's cultures, which enriches the culture of both sides. This anniversary has introduced me to Alisher Navoi, who I now realize played a similar role to that of Chaucer, in that each pioneered the use and elevated the use of their native language, is Uzbek and English, for poetry and literature. It's heartening that scholars from our two countries are working together on manuscripts and artifacts from that period. Both Navoi and Chaucer would have approved of such painstaking scholarship. I understand Navoi said, "Learning is knowledge acquired in small portions, as drops make the rivers that flow to the oceans." And Chaucer wrote, "For out of old fields, as man saith, cometh all the new corn from year to year, and out of old books, in good faith, cometh all the new science that men lear." So we look forward to the fruits of their scholarship. For the United Kingdom, commerce and culture are entwined. More people are employed in the UK in cultural and media matters than in financial services. And education is a major business for us, both at home and abroad, as students come here to study and our schools and universities set up campuses abroad. One of my most agreeable memories of Tashkent was talking to and lively discussion with students at two universities there, the Westminster University and the University of the Diplomatic Service. And now I understand that your president is planning a major university on the Oxbridge model. As Uzbekistan is opening up to the world and post-Brexit global Britain is looking to wider horizons, there could not be a better time to deepen our knowledge of each other and strengthen our ties culturally as well as in all other ways. Let's thank Alisher Navoi for giving us such a good occasion to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Bakhtiar Seyfulayev, Chairman of the Senate Committee on Youth, Culture and Sport and former Minister of Culture of Uzbekistan, will now speak.
Assalamu alaikum, az dostlar.
Good afternoon, dear friends and colleagues. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to participate and speak at this important event dedicated to the 580th anniversary of the great poet and statesman Alisher Navoi. I'm very pleased to see at today's event Caroline Dinenage, member of the British Parliament, Deputy Minister of Information, Communications, Culture, Media and Sport, Lord Peter Lilly, member of the House of Lords, our old and close friend, Bota Hopkinson, chairwoman and co-founder of the Conservative Friends of Eurasia, and British scientists and cultural figures. I would like to express my gratitude to the representatives of libraries and museums, in particular the British Library, who are participating in the forum and carefully preserving and researching historical manuscripts related to the works of Alisher Navoi. I would like to express also my deep gratitude to my colleagues, members of the British Parliament, for co-organizing today's event and for the high respect shown to our great ancestor by reading the poems of Alisher Navoi in English. I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize that in recent years, cooperation between the parliaments of Uzbekistan and the United Kingdom has been developing steadily. 2 months ago, we had the first online meeting of friendship groups in the parliaments of the two countries. And we agreed to expand and deepen our cooperation in all aspects. Today's online forum undoubtedly opens up a new and productive aspects of our collaboration. Dear friends, as noted in the forum program, the great poet and playwright William Shakespeare is as dear and respected to the British people as the great thinker and master of words Alisher Navoi is to us. Alisher Navoi is a poet who played an invaluable role in the self-awareness of our people and the formation of our nation. Love and respect for our native language, understanding of its inexhaustible richness, enter our minds, first of all, with the works of Navoi. Navoi is a poet who deeply expresses the joys and sorrows of human being, the meaning and essence of life, the owner of noble heart who sings a high human feelings. Alisher Navoi firmly believed that goodness, mercy, and justice would save mankind from spiritual decay. His verses, "The man is not a man if he does not grieve for the people," are reflected in the philosophy of life of the great poet, and he has always followed it. Throughout his life, the poet helped orphans, the poor, the disabled, and the needy, build schools and madrasas, hospitals, buses, and caravansarais, created gardens, and sponsored representatives of science and culture at his own expense. This glorious person played an important role in ensuring peace and stability in his state. Any conflicts and disputes that arose in the Timurid kingdom at that time were eliminated, first of all, due to the efforts of Hazrat Navoi. Uh, Navoi glorified friendship between peoples, creating his works in two languages. He contributed to the strengthening of fraternal ties between Turkic and Persian-speaking nations. Our people have been showing deep respect and esteem for their great son Alisher Navoi for centuries. 1991, the year of independence of Uzbekistan, was declared the year of Navoi. Alisher Navoi National Park has been established in Tashkent. The region and the city, the opera and ballet theater, the National Library, and universities are named after Alisher Navoi, which shows the level of respect of people and the nation to this great poet. So again, that just the fact itself that so many places, including historical places like streets and the universities which are named after Alisher Navoi, again, it's the example of the great respect to him. So once again, dear friends, Uzbekistan and United Kingdom are countries with a rich historical and cultural heritage. There is a great opportunity and need to share this rich heritage between our peoples. So I think today's forum is an event aimed at meeting such a cultural and spiritual need, strengthening the ties of friendship between our peoples. We are in favor of holding such events frequently on a large scale. At the same time, as a member of the International Academic Advisory Committee, I would like to emphasize that our countries have also opportunities for broad cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks. Our third speaker on cultural diplomacy is Paul Scully MP, Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State in the Department for Business, Energy and Industry, Minister for London, and the founding patron of the Conservative Friends of Eurasia.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Assalamu alaikum. And it's a pleasure to see so many friends and new friends here today. Your Excellencies, it's an absolute pleasure to join you both, your ambassador here in the UK, and of course reaching out overseas. I think this is the extraordinary time of that we find ourselves in, that we don't have to leave our offices or our front rooms to travel the world, to share our what is common of us, what binds us together, and to continue to be curious and learn more about each other's cultures and deepen our friendships through the means of Zoom in this instance. We've heard a lot, and I'm really pleased to join you on this anniversary of Alisher Navoi. I'm sorry in my recitation of his verse that I couldn't. Susan's saying that I can't hear. I don't know if the rest of you can hear me. There's someone that can't hear me. That in my recitation of the verses from Alisher Navoi, I couldn't quite match up to Lord Sheikh's rendition with his national dress as well. But I hope it came across that we really do appreciate the work of a master, the work of someone whose poetry has lasted the test of time of 580 years. But we work together on any number of cultural initiatives. The British Council has been in Uzbekistan since 1996, and the British Council serves us incredibly well as we in our work across the world. And Uzbekistan is no exception. And I hope that partnership bears fruit for cultural and educational exchange, and as a tool to bring us closely together culturally. We've got an ongoing relationship with various cultural organisations, with the Arts and Culture Development Foundation and the UK as well, including the British Library. All of these things do bring us together, and I hope that in coming together, when we're able to restart the twice weekly flights from Heathrow to Uzbekistan, and boy, are we trying to get our economy and our travel and everything open again, then we will be able to welcome you to the UK to share our offerings and to be able to come to you because it's so important that we remain curious, that we remain in a position that we want to discover more. And I think that was what really set us in good stead just over a year ago now. I think it was no accident that our first post-Brexit partnership and cooperation agreement with any Central Asian nation was with Uzbekistan, and that does underline the close ties between the two countries. And it secures long-term certainty for both of our countries' businesses and consumers. But it's broader than that, it's deeper than that. It goes far further with our relationships, our cooperation, environmental protection and the protection of human rights. But ultimately, it's the protection of our friendship as well. And that friendship is very much rooted in our cultures and that common thirst for learning. So can I just wish you congratulations again on this date, and Ramad. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Botta Hopkinson, House of Lords, and the chairwoman of the Conservative Friends of Eurasia, will share her thoughts.
Thank you very much, and it is really wonderful to see friends and His Excellency Ambassador, Senate, distinguished Senate, and ministers, and Lord Peter Lilly, our patron and our president of Conservative Friends of Eurasia. And it is a great pleasure to be speaking at this very important online event. And my thanks to our gracious host for helping to put this event together. In my capacity as chair of the Conservative Friends of Eurasia, one of our aims is to make the heritage of Eurasia and our efforts in collaboration more accessible to our friends and partners here in the UK and Eurasia, and specifically in Uzbekistan. Over the next few minutes, I would like to focus on some of the efforts being made in cultural diplomacy, to talk about noticeable events that I believe have been important in strengthening our cross-cultural ties. The importance of cultural diplomacy rests on the importance of culture. And we at the Conservative Friends of Eurasia realize to a much greater extent the importance of cultural events in achieving peace, prosperity, and security and that we're all aiming for. A Conservative Friends of Eurasia has been established a few years ago, and we strive to provide activities and opportunities in which people can get to understand each other, others' culture better by directly participating with each other at our events. Our events demonstrated that culture, by its very nature, is a collaboration, and it is about action and reaction, response, and how people learn from each other. Our President, Lord Peter Lilly, and members of Parliament, our patrons from the House of Commons and House of Lords, and our team experts on Eurasia are working towards developing an understanding of common values between Great Britain and Uzbekistan. Today you have seen also the huge contribution by patrons and by President and patrons of the Conservative Friends of Eurasia, such as Lord Peter Lilly and Paul Scully, Member of Parliament, Bob Blackman, Member of Parliament, Barbara Dingle, and myself have recorded themselves reading poems of Alisher Navoi. We are glad to contribute to this valuable knowledge and understanding of Alisher Navoi and his important role for the Uzbek nation. And this is one of our contribution of cultural diplomacy. As I have mentioned before, sharing our cultures is important as our countries have many ethnic groups with diverse cultural backgrounds. We can learn from one another, but first we must understand each other. Participants of our events contribute to the new ways of thinking, new knowledge, different experiences, art, food, which helps facilitate trade and strengthen international relations. Take the example of food. For instance, we're proud to say that Uzbek plov, Uzbek food, was served at our event in the House of Commons during the New Year about 2 years ago. Since the establishment of Conservative Friends of Eurasia a few years ago, as I said, we have co-organized over 14 events with the Uzbekistan Embassy, Uzbek community in the UK. Our president, Lord Peter Lilly, Paul Scully, and all our patrons from the House of Lords and House of Commons have hosted panel discussions, roundtables on topics such as trade between Great Britain and Eurasia, followed by a trade exhibition prepared and organized by embassies of Uzbekistan, Moldova, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and the ambassador, Mr. Rustamov, made an excellent speech on a trade cooperation between the two countries at our roundtable discussion at the House of Lords. It was last year in January 2020. We have also organized events to celebrate International Women's Day. with Women to Win. With Theresa May, she is a co-founder of Women to Win, and Barnes Jenkins. We have also organized Great Britain and Stance by inviting ambassadors of STAN countries, where the ambassador of Uzbekistan has spoken. We also paid attention to women in diplomacy and politics, and we had many other events, and they were all attended by the present and former ambassadors of the Uzbekistan embassy and the community of an Uzbek community here in London. Our events were held at the House of Lords, House of Commons, and a couple of events hosted by Uzbekistan embassy at the embassy. Alisher Navoi is the most representative figure of Uzbek literature and a national hero whose importance is equal to the great rulers Amir Timur, Babur, and Mirza Ulugh-Bek. It is wonderful that we can celebrate and appreciate Alisher Navoi together today as we work toward strengthening relationships and improving cultural diplomacy between our two countries. And we're looking forward very much under the leadership of Lord Peter Lilly, our president, to host much more events. And we are planning, we have already discussed with Ambassador of the Uzbekistan Embassy last year. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Bota. Dr. Michael Erdman is the Curator of Turkish and Turkic Collections at the British Library. He will speak to us now about the Navoi manuscripts held at the British Library and the fascinating research that he and his colleagues are undertaking.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Good afternoon to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Dr. Michael Erdman. I'm the Curator of Turkish and Turkic Collections at the British Library, and it's my pleasure to be here today in order to talk to you about the Mir Alisher Navoi holdings at the British Library and to provide you with a bit of an overview of them and the research that we're doing. Today, I'm going to start by giving you an overview of the Eastern Turkic manuscripts at the British Library, what they contain, how they fit into the broader collections. Then I'm going to look at some of the Navoi manuscripts, a smaller part of that, and finally go on to a bit of the life and times of Navoi, so the manuscripts from Navoi's actual lifetime, before changing tack to look at a particular manuscript that I think is especially beautiful, followed by how you at home, outside of the United Kingdom, inside of the United Kingdom, can access these manuscripts from the comfort of your home without having to come to the library, especially during the lockdown or during the pandemic. And I'll end the sort of broader part of the presentation with a look at some of the continued work that we're doing, what still needs to be done and what sort of work we're doing to make sure that this is an easier collection to access, before providing you with a few different ways to keep up to date with the Mir Alisher Navoi manuscripts, our collections, and the work of the library and its curators as a whole. So the British Library, as perhaps you know, is the National Library of the United Kingdom. It's located in central London by St. Pancras. For those of you who are Harry Potter fans, it's quite close to the 9 3/4 platform. And the library holds over 170 million items, of which only about 150 items are manuscripts in Chagatai and other Eastern Turkic languages. The majority of these are in Chagatai, the language that was made famous and for which Navoi created a sort of a standard in the 15th century. But a number of others are also in earlier versions of Uyghur, of Tatar, of Kyrgyz, Kazakh, and other Turkic languages spoken across Central Asia, Iran, Northern India, Eastern Turkestan, and Siberia. These touch on poetry, history, politics, and administration. So I have here, for example, on the left of your screen, a Chagatai version of the Baqiyat-i Baburi, or the Baburname, the memoirs of the first Mughal emperor, Babur. But some of them others are other aspects of history of Central Asia and contain beautiful illumination or illustration. So here on the right-hand side of your screen, you see the Nusratname, a history of Chinggis Khan and his descendants, the Shaybanids, from about the 15th century, which exemplifies the heights of illustration, of painting, and figurative representation in Central Asia during this period. So it contains quite a few beautiful images. And for those of you who can't come to London, it actually happens to be available online. Within these 150 items, approximately 40 are manuscripts relating to Navoi's work. That means they're poetry, usually poetry, and they might also be prose by Navoi, or perhaps selections by another author of his poetry and prose. The majority of these poems, as you would expect, are in Chagatai, given that this is the language Navoi made famous. But we do have a few others in Persian and a small number in Ottoman Turkish. So on the far right-hand side of the screen, you see an example of a 16th century Khamsai Navoi, a collection of the cycle of 5 poems by Navoi from the 16th century, which is in Chagatai Turkic. But in the center, you can also see a 16th century rather, Persian translation as well from the Divan-i Fani, which contains some information to show you how Navoi's poetries were translated and transmitted to non-Turkic speakers across Eurasia and in the other literary language of Central Asia. These manuscripts span from the 15th century, so from Navoi's lifetime, right up to the 19th century, when Chagatai starts to fall out of usage as a literary vehicle in Central Asia. These earlier manuscripts, though I'm going to look a bit at the beginning of that time spectrum, 3 of them actually relate to the life of Navoi himself. So we have 3 different manuscripts within the British Library's collections, OR 401, 3493, and Ad MS 7914, which are from the time of Navoi's life, either just before his death in 1501 or just after his death in 1509. Some of these, such as the 2 on the far left, are from Herat. This is a Muntakhabi Divani Navoi, so it's a selection of poems from his divan. It's not just beautiful calligraphy and beautiful poetry as well, obviously, but it's complemented by some stunning decoupage illumination, as well as gold floral illumination on the pages. And occasionally you do see, as on the far left, an illustration as well. It's not clear if these items, these additions were made after the poetry was actually copied. So these are not actually contemporary illustrations or illuminations, but it shows at least the way our manuscripts can demonstrate the high value of Navoi's poetry and the esteem with which his work was treated. Similarly, the far right, we have another item from 1482, which is actually from northern India. Again, some of Navoi's poetry that exemplifies the Gharaib es-Sighar, exemplifies the way in which his poetry traveled from Herat and from Central Asia to other Turkic-speaking areas. And these are all very important, not only for an understanding of Navoi's life and times, but also an important component of showing the way in which his legacy evolved over time. So we can see what his poetry looked like and how it was copied when he was alive, and then compare it to some of those items I showed you earlier from the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries to get an understanding of the evolution of Chagatai poetry. One particularly interesting example that I'd like to share with you is OR 1374, one of these later items from the 16th century from Yazd in contemporary Iran. It's a beautifully illustrated text. So we have quite stunning illumination. The far left, you have a sejade, or a carpet, a prayer rug motif, which shows you the use of gold and blue to adorn the opening of the Khamsa. But then we also have what is the really spectacular part of this item, which is the lacquered binding, which shows a hunting scene. So it shows a prince out on the hunt with his courtesans and really shows the depth and the detail of painting and of decorative arts in Iran at this time. But it also gives you a hint as to how valuable this particular Khamsa was seen, and indeed the broader work of Navoi's poetry. This beautiful lacquered binding is complemented on the interior by some illustrations as well, which are quite playful and fun. As you can see, they show the way in which illustration, illumination, and text were played out on a page, and how the artist might have subverted this use of the text box. You can see the arrow shooting up over the text box up to a part of the illustration that leaves the text. There's one last final aspect of this manuscript that's quite interesting, which is that there are a number of different parts of it that are covered in gold. So there's a shamsa, a sun out of gold, and a few gold blocks out of gold applied to the pages, which appear to block out the names of the owners. This sort of information is something that we have to recover through a variety of different new technologies, and it only will help us to understand how manuscripts such as these, how books such as these were traded across Eurasia, how information, knowledge, beauty, art was traded and spread from Central Asia through Iran, India, East Turkestan, Siberia, and how that was coveted by various different individuals across time and space. So now your appetite has been whetted for Navai's poetry and some of his manuscripts. And don't fear, there are 6 items from the British Library that you can in fact access free of charge online. 4 of these, OR 3493, ADMS 7914, OR 401, and OR 13061 rather, are all available through bl.uk/manuscripts. They can be accessed just by typing in Navoi and then going through the searches. As you can see on the far left, some of them show quite beautiful calligraphy. Others, such as on the far right, you have Gharad as-Sighar, which is from the Ottoman Empire. So it's actually a 16th century work showing the spread of Navai's poetry to Turkey or to Anatolia. And this is an incomplete text. So the actual Gharad as-Sighar is not a full version of Gharad as-Sighar, but we do retain some of the more beautiful illuminations and illustrations that go along with the text, which have been digitized in full. In addition to these, 2 other items are available through the library's Archives and Manuscript catalog, and they're digitized through the Endangered Archive Program, which is a program administered by the library, whereby the library assists libraries and archives around the world with collections at risk to digitize and disseminate them. These happen to be 2 volumes of Navai's poetry housed at the Karl von Richthofen Academic Library in Dushanbe, Tajikistan. And you can peruse these 19th century collections, codices, or here this divan, of his poetry, again, free of charge online at the British Library, and be able to compare them with some of these earlier recensions of Navai's works. So what's left to be done? Well, by and large, most of the manuscripts relating to Navai's poetry have in fact been given at least skeletal records on our catalog. So on the Archives and Manuscripts catalog that you can find on the British Library's website. A few final manuscripts rather from the early printed catalog in 1888 still need to be cataloged so that we have a whole corpus of the manuscripts available to search online. And then once that's done, what we need to do is actually link a lot of these texts. So I have here on the right-hand side a text, an example of a catalog record for the Abushka, an Ottoman manuscript that is actually a dictionary of Chagatai Turkic, rather, in Ottoman Turkish, which relies heavily on Navai's poetry to explain the meanings of the words. In order to really get a full sense of the networks of knowledge dissemination, knowledge sharing, and knowledge creation, relying on but not exclusively by Navoi, we really have to start beginning to create these webs of connections within our catalogs and with the actual works, so that researchers such as you and interested individuals such as you can easily find them and understand through your own lens how Navai's poetry influenced the literary and scientific communities throughout Eurasia from the 15th century onwards. So I provided you with quite a lot of information now, and don't fear, there's an easy way to be able to ask questions or to find out a bit more. You can always get in touch with me by email through michael.erdman@bl.uk, or you can visit our blog. So the British Library Asian and African blogs do contain a number of different articles about Navai's poetry for you to peruse, as well as my own personal blog site, altaytuyukhar.home.blog, with a bit more context about what we have. And please do follow us on Twitter at altaytuyukhar, as I routinely will update individuals as new manuscripts are cataloged, photographed, and possibly digitized, so that you can keep up to date with the freshest information about how you can get your fix of Navai right from home. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today's proceedings.
Thank you, Michael. That was absolutely fascinating, and I loved being able to see visually some of the manuscripts as well as to hear about them. It seems that there is a growing interest in the publishing world about Alisher Navoi, and so today we are able to present not 1, but 2 new books with Navoi as a theme. You have already heard of Navoi's ghazals, translated for a new volume by Uzbek poet Azam Obidov, who will talk about his work now. And I'm then delighted that British poet Andrew Staniland will be joining us. Andrew visited Uzbekistan in 2020, serendipitously arriving exactly a year ago today. and he was inspired to create his own collection titled A New Divan, Hatip Alisher Navoi. Azam, please tell us about your collection.
Assalamu alaikum, dear friends, dear colleagues, dear participants of this wonderful forum. I'm very glad, I'm very happy to be part of this very, very nice forum. The book I published with my friend in America, her name is Abby Britton. She was the editor of this book. It's called Without You. And we compiled 14 ghazals by Alisher Navoi and Navoi's Blooming Garden by Tursunoy Sodiqova, who was the enlightener and excellent poet of Uzbekistan. So we published this book 2 weeks ago. It was, I believe, a very nice book. I haven't seen this book yet, but my friends already sent it to me to Tashkent from the US. But some of my friends already purchased it on Amazon, and it's also available on Kindle. So I'm very glad that we could put together this kind of very, very small book. I'm also very happy to listen to those wonderful people who read the ghazals in my translation. Just tears came to my eyes when I listened to them. It was wonderful, fantastic reading. Thank you so much. And of course, big thanks goes to the Uzbek embassy in London. Thank you so much for organizing such a nice forum. I'm very open. I'm an independent poet, and I can say that I'm open for any cooperation with British friends, especially translators, literary agents, or literary organizations to put together more books by Alisher Navoi in English and present it to the English world. I'm just going to read my poem. It is called Navoi's Lamentation, and you will just see what I'm thinking now about these days especially, and it will just might reflect my state of mind. Navoi's Lamentation. It's all good that you still remember me. I'm so grateful. I feel humbled. However, my world has crumbled without translators, honest initiators, literary agents, project coordinators, and with no desire to open up for exchange and cooperation, for learning foreign languages, for teamwork and interaction, with no single international poetry festival, or writer's residency, or UNESCO City of Literature in the rich historic country, with only big jealousy. Are you going to promote me worldwide? Oh my, please don't turn white. When will you build an international house of creativity in Tashkent, Namangan, and Hiva? Why don't you establish Navoi Institute in London, New York, or Lima? Will you continue to ask permission from the president for all of this and wait for more several hundred years? Or will you listen to me and master how to work faster with no spiritual disaster? I'm sorry. It looks like onto the truth I stumbled. I feel humbled. It's all good that you still remember me. I'm so grateful, but my soul is painful because you are still dependent. Literature and art will be successful only when they are independent. I request you, please remember not me, but my wise words. Do not deceive yourselves. Do not deceive yourselves, the promoters of my works, my dedicated guards. In any case, thank you. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts and for sharing your poetry with us. Andrew, can we hear from you now, please?
Yep. So this is my book, which Sophie has introduced, a new Diwan Hatip Alisher Navoi, and available on Amazon. It's a sequence of 84 short poems. I will show you the first poem so you can see the structure. Yep. All the poems are the same, 2 couplets. Each line has 8 beats and is stepped in the middle. I gaze upon and gaze upon his guzzles, and it seems as though I have been reading roses, or the rows of tiles, the I, the O, under a glaze in turquoise cursive, or in damask buds, the ink of which has that strong odor that a poem has when poets think. When I first had the idea for the sequence, the title was going to be A Mystical Conversation with Alisher Navoi. I thought each poem would respond to a poem of his and it would be a profound mystical dialogue. So what went wrong? The first thing was that there are very few translations of his poems, so I was short of material. The second thing, though, is just how inspiring Uzbekistan is. So a lot of the poems are about my impressions of the country and the culture. Second. As Sophie mentioned, hang on. Slight technical hitch, there we go. I went there exactly a year ago today. Incredible timing, really. And this photo I took on my first day in Uzbekistan, my first day in Tashkent, at the Alisher Navoi Literary Museum. So I went there on my very first day, which is dedication, I think. So the third thing about what changed the collection was that a week after I got back, the Uzbekistan shut its airspace and the lockdown started worldwide. My intention was to write a few poems after that trip, then another trip, write some more, then maybe another trip, write some more. But that wasn't possible. But fortunately, I wrote the sequence much quicker than I expected. I found a lot more ideas for poems in that 1 to 2.5 week trip than I ever expected to. So in the end, about a quarter of the poems are either directly about Navoi or in response to his poems. But for the rest, he was still a presiding inspiration for the tone, for the motifs and the images that I used. In his poems, for some reason, I'm having a problem. There we go, moving along from one photo to the next. In his poems, he likes to play with the word Navo, which is the root of his pen name, and which means melody. So I wrote about a poem about him that plays with a few Nav and Nov words in English. A navigator of a newly metered idiom he has no match in. This is Navoi, as much an innovator as an institution that is even in an Uzbek novel now, as unavoidable as when a novice dabbed a nib to know. And it's worth emphasizing that Navoi is such a traditional figure now because he broke with tradition and did something new. Poets were supposed to write in Persian, but he wrote in Chagatai instead. Also in Tashkent, I visited his metro station. Why isn't there a Shakespeare station on the London Underground? Who knows? Anyway, this is a poem about Navoi's own personal metro station. The station that is Navoi's in Tashkent's metro, scenes from his poems in panels, the trains swish by like pages turning, is a temple to him, as serene as any station can be, with its wonderful white domes, that have cut stems in an enameled swathe. A lot of the poems of his that I read are about the agonies of love. I'm too old for that sort of thing, so I didn't find much inspiration there. But there are a few poems on the subject, including this rather crisp one. The beating or the beating up that happens with a lover's heart is none of a beloved's business. It is hurt by its own hurt. And if it is a metaphor of mystical abandonment, a blockage in the organ of beholding must be what is meant. That leads us to the other aspect of his love poems. Are they really spiritual poems about separation from the divine beloved? I took ideas from his poems and imagined them in terms either of spiritual experience or of the experience of poetry. This one is about spiritual experience. This light is like a laying of the lips of lilacs on the eyelids. It is like a lens that has the essence of them on the iris. It is like a latent April tip of them inside the pupil, and the reflex that reflects it is the eye's enlightened dew. On the last day of my trip, back in Tashkent, I went to Sophie's favorite museum, which is the Museum of Applied Arts, and you can see why it's her favorite. I mean, it's amazing. There was some sort of talk or presentation in the main hall, and I chatted to 3 young dancers in traditional costume who were waiting in the corridor to perform. They sent me into the hall so I could watch their dance. Just to conclude, what makes Uzbekistan for me so inspiring and so beautiful is that the spirit of Navoi and the artistry of the past are very much alive today in the arts and crafts and in the hearts and souls of the people. The 3 young dancers waiting in a calm museum corridor to illustrate an item summoned me to watch them through that door. The tendrils of their arms in silk are similes by Navoi. Spring smiles are stuck to as a vow is, and I am an Navoi. Thank you very much.
Those are beautiful, and I do thoroughly encourage all of you to go online after buy a copy of Andrew's book from Amazon. You will thoroughly enjoy reading a few of which he's shared today. The next part of our event is something completely different. It's time for you to be immersed in the sounds of maqam, the classical songs from Uzbekistan, which often build upon the poetry of Navoi. Sherzod Asadov, Associate Professor of the Yunus Rajabi Uzbek National Institute of Music, will provide a short introduction to each of the pieces, and the talented members of the Ustazoda Ensemble live on our video feed from their studio in Tashkent. The Ustazoda Ensemble was founded by Abror Zufarov in 2010. Abror is a teacher at the School of Maqam Research Center, as well as a professional singer and musician, and he will be performing the maqam with the ensemble today. You will be hearing a number of traditional instruments of Uzbekistan this afternoon, and I will introduce you to them now. Abror will be playing the tambur, a long-necked string instrument with 4 metal strings, which are plucked with a wire plectrum. He will also be singing. Sherzod Raziev is playing the kanun, a stringed instrument laid horizontally on the lap, which is akin to a zither. On the dutar, a 2-stringed lute, we have Sherzod Asadov. Kamola Akilova is playing the sato, an instrument similar to the tanbur, but with 5 strings. One of these strings is plucked, and the other 4 are drones. Jamshiduddin Zoridinov is performing ondoira. He will provide the percussive background to the maqam. And last, but certainly not least, you will hear the melodies of vocalist Sohiba Abdullayeva singing Navoi's inspired words. Sherzod, please tell us about the pieces you have chosen to perform.
Good afternoon, dear friends. We remember Mir Alisher Navoi is a great thinker, poet, statesman, but the aspects of Hazrat Navoi related to music are also widely covered in historical sources. The musical terms in the works of Mir Alisher Navoi can testify to this. The sources also provide a lot of information about the development of music in the time of Alisher Navoi and his support to artists in this direction. These include forming a team of musicians, organizing various music competitions, and even sponsoring the field of music. Nawai's nickname is also derived from the Nawa Maqam, one of the famous maqams of our great musical heritage. Today, we invited Ensemble Ustazada led by Abrar Zufarov. So you will be listening to the sample music. The first, this maqam is called Tashkent Ushogar. It is known that there are several types of ushoks, and it is Tashkent Ushok that became famous with Nawai's Ghazal, which begin as Karakuzum. Please enjoy it.
Karakuzum kilo mardum luk eddi fan qırıyıl Kuzum karasına mardum kebiyeten qırıyıl Yüzün gülüge kul ravzasin yasa gülşen Kadin halga can gül şanım çemen kılgil Kavarin gabagir qawndin khnabala Itin gamzada jon rish tasin rasan qilgil wa Yüzün sağlığa yetsin desen gönüllerini Saçını bastın ayak Çin ile aşken kılgır Hazan spatge İbab banimaz mani Bu باغ تام گری ندن تکن قلقیل ای وای یاره yüzide tırnak vurulsam ey Rafik mani tu sana Sam'ancıman kılgıl yaray Vay yaray Vay vay adamanay Vay yaray Ey yaray
The next piece of music performed by Avrar Zufarov is a work called Nava from the Maqam of Nawar, which led to the creation of the pen name of Hazrat Navoi. The song Nawa has been loved by our people for centuries, and when we listen to it, we realize that a person is a guest and a stranger to the world. Shavkat Mirziyoyev is citing one of the famous Navai's ghazals in Uzbek. Thank you. Now you will listen to the song Sarvi Gulru Kelmade, performed by the vocalist of their ensemble Ustazada Sahib Bakhan Abdullahiver. This song is also performed as a melody under the name Munajat. This work is also very popular in the form of melodies and tradition in our country in memory of Navoi. Thank you. The next song, as we have mentioned above, that Navoi liked poetry and music and was able to connect them very elegantly. Alisher Navoi had a special respect for a musician to these love for music. Therefore, before listening to the next song, Nasri Segaf, we would like to introduce our musicians. Abrar Zufar will play the tambour. Shavkat Matyagubov will play dutar. Jamshuddin Zuhruddin will play the daira. Ziad Khan Ruzin will play the qanun. Please enjoy the song. Thank you. Dear participant, our last work for you, which we are presenting today, is called Sarahbari Dugah, from the Dugah Maqam of Shash Maqam. It is known that in the songs of Uzbek national Maqam, there are many songs sung with Navai's ghazals. Singers Abrar Zufarov and Sahiba Khan Abdullaeva will sing this song for you, Sarahbari Dugah. Please enjoy.
سجان پیرون باق سعی نبود بوزرا
Rahmat, salamat bo'linglar.
Thank you. Good wishes to you.
That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you all to all of our performers and to our speakers for this with us, and particularly that wonderful, evocative, haunting music at the end. I know that will stay with me for many days and weeks to come. Our event is sadly now drawing to an end. So all that remains is for me to ask my dear friend, His Excellency Said Rustamov, Ambassador of Uzbekistan to the UK and Ireland, to give the closing remarks. Ambassador.
Safi, thank you very much. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed today's forum dedicated to the great poet Alisher Navoi, whose work found reflection in literature, art, and music. I take this opportunity, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the quite big team of organizations and wonderful people whose personal efforts and contribution made this event happen and successful. First, I would like to thank organizers, the Minister of Culture of Uzbekistan, British-Uzbek Society, Committee of Inter-Ethnic Relations and Friendly Ties with Foreign Countries under the Cabinet of Ministers of Uzbekistan, BBC Uzbek, and others. And special thanks to the main organizer, dear Boto Hopkinson, the chairman of the Conservative Friends of Eurasia, for tremendous support, and especially with preparation of amazing video with British parliamentarians reciting poetry of Alisher Navoi. I really deeply appreciate our speakers. MP Caroline Dinenage, UK Minister of State and Digital Culture. Special thanks to Lord Peter Lilly, MP Paul Scully from UK Parliament, Senator Saifullah, Chairman of Committee of Youth, Culture and Sport at the Senate of the Parliament of Uzbekistan, Mr. Asadov, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Kamola Akilova, Deputy Minister of Culture of Uzbekistan, for their personal input and remarks. And of course, excellent analysis and review of Alisher Navoi's works made by Dr. Michael Erdman, curator of Turkish and Turkic Collections at the British Library, deserves all praise. Dr. Erdman, thank you, and the team of the British Library for important and noble work to study and preserve invaluable heritage of Uzbek literature and culture. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in congratulating Mr. Azam Abidov on successful presentation of the collection of translations of Alisher Navoi ghazals, as well as Mr. Andrew Steinland for his book, New Divan. I hope you both continue work and publish new books, and you can definitely rely on the embassy's assistance in the further publications. And special thanks to the Ustazada Ensemble at the Macomb School Research Center for virtuous performance of classical songs based on the poems of Alisher Navoi. I am sure today they have found new fans in the UK. And finally, Today's event would not be perfectly organized without excellent moderation of Safi Ibbetson, the tourism brand ambassador of Uzbekistan to UK, and Fred Harrison, our friend, for creating the opportunity to organize such a forum on the Zoom platform, as well as two members of my team at the embassy, Aliyor and Shahruz, and colleagues from Uzbekistan, including Zokir Jon Atabayev and Fazlullah Yusupov, for solving all technical issues and making all preparations. Dear participants, as you could see, we have great prospects for the development of cooperation in the field of culture. Uzbekistan possesses not only famous historical and architectural monuments, but also rich and colorful art. We are very interested in sharing this unique culture with British people and ready to continue work on that with all of you. Let me conclude with thanking all of you for participating in today's event and for your love for the work of great poet Alisher Navoi. We will try to organize such event as often as possible as part of our public diplomacy work and efforts to bridging our two nations and two peoples. It is my great special pleasure to announce that on February 12th, the British-Uzbek Society, together with the Saiga Conservation Alliance, will hold a very interesting online webinar on biodiversity conservation in Uzbekistan. I take this opportunity to invite all of you to take part in this event and, of course, the other events organized by the British-Uzbek Society. Once again, thank you very much. I wish you all the best. I wish you be well and safe, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much. Safi?
Thank you all for joining us for this very special occasion today. And that you have learned a little bit more about this prominent literary figure, and that you will keep Alisher Navoi, his poetry and the music it has inspired in your minds and your hearts in the months to come. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.